Okay, so I think everything is working. I managed to get the debugger to work with Z, I think. Yeah, so I have the debugger. We need to. I don't know if I really need the terminal part, to be honest with you. Terminal. I. Just seeing how it looks on the camera before we really dive in. Frames, breakpoints. I've not used it, for the record. So it's going to be a lot of getting used to it. But it is working, so we can debug. Oh, that's nice. See the hexadecimal memory view as all question marks. Doesn't really have a purpose, I guess, here. Maybe it's not for this language supported. So I'm in a weird state of both too tired and too not tired. So we'll see what that combination does for my concentration. But having the debugger working in Z is pretty fundamental as we get into the harder parts of this task. Implementing the new worker system for Pico. I need to remember that I should be reiterating what I'm doing more often as I code. So what I mean by that is reiterating the overarching task, I guess, more than my brain would naturally think to do so. So that's nice. I can walk up and down the stack. Just before we dive into what we're actually doing, and let me just see if the... Oh, I have to... I use an extension for GNOME to handle my multiple monitors while I'm streaming, and sometimes I forget to turn it on. So, where am I? So I don't know how well everything's going to come across today, because last time I did some intensive tasks before streaming, it made the stream pretty weird. And I did some more intensive tasks today. Like, stuff like fuzz testing and all of this. It uses up all the CPU and sometimes I max out RAM because, I have a memory leak and then I exhaust RAM, and that makes Linux kill random processors, which is always fun. I think it's always the thing that annoys me the most about Linux, and annoying may be the wrong word, but I do feel like when you have resource exhaustion on Windows versus Windows versus Linux, it's definitely something Windows handles better than Linux. Resource exhaustion. And I'm wondering if it's not necessarily because Windows handles resource exhaustion better than Linux, even though I think it probably does. And I don't think it's just the fact that things like Task Manager are written in assembly directly and use practically no resources. But, or at least they used to be. Probably not anymore. But, I think it's because Windows is a lot better at starting stopped surfaces after they've crashed. Though I could be wrong. So let's see. Did that work? Okay, that worked. So the overlay updated. So we have debugging working. So before we actually dive into what we're doing today, I think I just want to get a bit more comfortable with the debugger. Just look at everything. What I'm wondering is, because obviously, on this side of the screen on the right is not visible on the stream. And I do wonder if I should at some point just trim the visual area more. Oh, I see it creates like a debug file when it's debugging. That's interesting. Does it clean it up for me when it's done? Yeah, it does. Okay. I've never done just straight up DLV commands in the console like this. I've done DLV commands when you're like literally doing DLV for debugging, but what's oh, is this so I can do? Okay, fair enough. Okay, that makes sense. Okay. That's just so I can introspect on things. Go to memory. What does that do? Nothing. I wonder if that would teleport me to the memory view if I had that. I'm wondering if this is for like C-based applications. Let's hide it because it's not doing anything. Ooh. Yeah. So like I said, both too tired and both not tired enough. A deadly combination when you want to do work. So that's interesting. You can toggle on enabling breakpoint for fatal throws and unrecovered panics. Because in Goland, I thought that was always just mandatory, but maybe I expand. Why would I expand? Okay, just that. Okay. The answer is you wouldn't. Minimize. Okay. Just getting comfortable before we really dive into using it. Set condition. Okay. Set condition. Okay. Can I not do that from here? Run to cursor. Open get blame. Set hit condition breakpoint. How many breakpoint hits to ignore? I didn't know you could do that. Set condition breakpoint. Okay. Set log breakpoint. Message to log when a breakpoint is hit. But I guess that doesn't pause it. Okay. Set log message. Set log message to display instead of stopping when a breakpoint is hit. And you can't set a hit condition here. Apparently. Whatever that means. Okay, well, I think I know everything now. Rerun session. Step in, step out, step over, continue. Is there not just a button to just like pause all breakpoints temporarily? Threads, rerun session. There's not like a global just like stop all, please. Do I have to... Whenever I want to step... Do I have to go through them all individually one by one to stop? Because I use that way too much in Goland. Right, you know, like ignore all breakpoints. Step in, step out. Terminate all threads. What does that do? Stop the program? Yes. Okay. It's a bit dramatic way of saying it, in my opinion, but whatever. Terminate all threads. Okay. So the only thing I think I'm missing is just a button to disable everything. Okay, hold on. Why does it say space and when I press... Disable breakpoint is space. Okay, well, I'm selecting here, and I do space, and it gives me space in the... What do you mean, space? Oh, now it's working. Okay, now it's not working. So that's just inconsistent and confusing. Look, I select the thing. Well, let's go back to... Okay, I clicked on Fatal Flows. Space. Okay, now it's toggling it. I go here. Space. It's not toggling it. That's just buggy interface. Alright. Well. Okay. So, just before I dive in, my stream setup is a bit weird. I can't show Firefox today because I started it up incorrectly. And so it'll bug out if I try and share it. Just checking everything before I start. That everything is all good. And then I can concentrate. Right. So let's take a pause for a second. Let's bring this down. Now, before I bring it down, I'm noticing, quite annoyingly, that what's... I'm looking at the buttons on the right-hand side. Just to check there's nothing I missed. Open threads sidebar. That's not what I want to do. Agent panel, I don't want that. Language servers, project search, project diagnostics, close left dock. The reason why I'm pausing for a second is I'm just trying to figure out... how do I swap back easily between the debug and the terminal. I think I gotta press this button down here. Okay, so that is... Can I have these buttons somewhere else? Nope, that's not what I wanted to do. Nope, 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 nope. Now I'm messing everything up, and this is going. Now I've lost my file. I've lost my files. Okay, that's back. Give me a moment while I struggle with the IDE. So that's... That's not what I want to do. So what were the choices? I had... Okay. Zed has their own AI providers. You get 2,000 accepted suggestions every keystroke for free. Alright. I don't think I care about that. I don't think I care about that. Oh, I turned it off. Or maybe it was already off. Okay, what's outline panel? Okay, I don't care about that. Collab panel. Collab. Git panel. Okay. Ah, that's how I open that, because I did that by mistake the other day. Now, this isn't a bad idea, actually. If I have a panel on the side here, I can restrict these IDE, actually, to be more... covered by what we're doing. So I might play around with that. If you give me a second. How's this? How is this? Is this better? Is this better? Okay. Let's try this. So I added a right panel, which in turn means that everything should stay within the right width of the video. Okay. So, just a little bit of setting up. Time to dive in, I think. Let's get everything exactly as I want it. Maybe this is how I want it. Okay, go test v tags equals integration. Let's start here. Just remind myself, is everything actually passing before we proceed? Everything's passing. Okay. So. So I didn't clean up the code base after the last time I did some programming. So this needs to be cleaned up. So we have the bare essential of a system working. It allows us to create a job, which is obviously a rare thing in this economy. It allows us to create a job. We have the concept of a worker, but the worker isn't a concept which is persisted to the database, which it will need to be in the future when we want to distribute work across the database and actually be able to do things like, list all of the work that a certain worker did and blah-de-blah-de-blah. Right now, we can technically do that because we do know the worker ID who did it, but I think we will actually want to be able to record the workers and their configurations and all of the data about the life cycle of the worker. That should be recorded in the database, so then we can observe upon it, especially in the interface we want to make after the fact. So I'm feeling happy how things are coming together. I'm just getting my mind back into the code because I've had my mind in other code since the last time we looked at this. So it's always good to try and take the moment and get the feel for what I wrote. This is a long function. I suspect this is probably breaking the linter. Can this do that for me? Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'm wondering if this is too long for the linter, or maybe it's like literally at the limit, which is fine. It's always nice to do it like this, because if I recall correctly, it reduces it by 1 allocation, which is always nice. So the main thing is that this system does nothing until it's wired in. So we're still working on building out the worker system for Pico. We managed to get it to actually, just as a recap, we managed to actually get it to process jobs, and they look like what we have here in the runner test files. So you have your arguments. You're able to say the kind of job that it is, and this will be used for routing purposes. You're able to define the worker itself. So then you can put your own work method on your worker, and then have your arguments which can be configured for different types of jobs for that piece of work. And this would be when we've finished wiring everything up, the goal is that this is the structure, what I'm selecting here, that the developer actually writes when they want to create a new worker unit, basically. You don't need the count, obviously. You don't need to add parameters here. You will need the kind. The only things that are essential is, that you have defined a type struct, and you do have a type struct for your worker, and you do have a work method on it. And then, the args would be typed. In theory, I guess you could actually not even have typed args, and you could just put, string here. I should test it with primitives, actually, to prove that concept. But in theory, you could actually just have a primitive here. Right, there's no reason. Oh, no, it can't be a primitive because it has to implement the kind interface. At least at the moment. At least at the moment. Maybe we should have a generic. I don't know. But obviously this won't work, right? If someone using Pico, because like right now with Pico, we do a lot of code generation, with pages and such. And most notably, I don't have my plugin installed. I'm going to have to install that afterwards. Most notably, we have actions here. And so the same concept will be here, you know, how we have the action. That's, you know, and you have your cool for the action. We'll do the same thing for work, for the worker. Maybe I'll even rename it to be cool, to be consistent. Because I do like the idea of being consistent here, actually. I might work on this after the fact, like try and make them like the action system and the worker system to be as cohesive as possible. Because obviously, to a certain extent, I have a deviation in implementation, and that's to be expected because they're different systems for different purposes. But it could be confusing developer experience. It could be confusing developer experience. So what I think I'm going to do is I think I'm just going to continue with what I've done already. Which is going to make these two systems split. Well, they've already split. But it's going to make these two systems clearly two systems. And then what I might do before I actually put this live is try and merge the experience. So that, because what I like the idea is that if you have learnt one system, that the other system is easy to learn. Like it feels intuitive. Right now, if you learn one system, you may be feeling like you're working with a different framework when implementing the other system. Because the way that this system works is it uses composition to you define your struct. Oh yes. So they can't really merge too much because they are really conceptually different. But this one, it uses composition, even though the action meta is technically an optional. No, it's not. I think I made it mandatory in the end. It was originally optional. But I think I made it mandatory for the system to work. And you get things like the context from the request. I believe that to be true. Because you have your raw HTTP request here. And so I think that there's just a straight up just... Hold on. Is it on Action Meta? Yeah, so Action Meta has context and it gets it from raw request, or otherwise it gives you a blank context. So that's obviously a deviation because if we wanted to align them, it would look like something like blah 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 eco worker metadata or something like that. Action metadata, worker metadata. No, it wouldn't look like that. Sorry, it would look like that. What have I just done? Went to the definition of a string. It would look like this because I don't care what you do for args. Well, I do because you have to implement that interface. But then the recording worker would get its context from there, which means this... I'm not sure if it... I think this is going to be something I'm going to have to really think of, but I think I'm going to prioritize... Sometimes I like to prioritize building something before ironing out the interface, which can sound weird because sometimes when you build something, it tells you how it wants to work. Like, it becomes obvious how it's begging to work, if that makes sense. And I know you could say, well, of course it's obvious. You know, you half built it, so put yourself into a corner. But that's not necessarily true because obviously, if the way that it seems to work is so egregious, then that also becomes clear too. I mean, it could always be that the action system is the system that has to change. But the thing is that the action system is trying to comply with rules that the worker system doesn't need to comply with. Because, for example, with the action system, I'm trying to have this having a one-to-one mapping with the arguments to what you put into TypeScript or JavaScript. And so that's why it doesn't take context as a parameter, because you can't symbolize that context on your JavaScript or TypeScript side. And if you were to, it would be through some sort of weird hacky means, right? So I'm trying to keep it like a one-to-one mapping, and that's why action is the way that it is, because it's trying to map to JavaScript, which is why we have this whole action metadata thing here. But worker doesn't have the same context or constraints. So trying to map the worker system to be similar to the action system could be a needless exercise. It's actually quite nice now I've done what I just did because you can see all of the things on the side, which is quite nice. It makes it feel more like an actual enclosed space. So I think that's quite good. So maybe the worker system does beg to be different. I think we're just going to keep building it out, then we'll decide this. I mean, when I was building it out up until this point, and I don't know when I started, or a month ago, a few weeks ago. It's been one of those things where like I work on it like a few times per week, and so I lose track on because it's not even the. I have other tasks for Pico which are taking up a lot more of my time, so this is like a side task even for Pico, even though I do need this done. Um, but it is good to obviously have that review of the developer experience. Now we are actually starting to see the system um appearing and being usable. Um, so let me continue to have a think for a second. I think it's just stick to the direction I already have. The reason why it's so important is because I think what I would like to do is we're not going to be wiring this up anytime soon to actually be usable as such for a while. And the reason why I say that is there's no reason to prematurely release it. So, the next step is to wire it into the Bootstrap system. So the Bootstrap is the dependency injection system that Pico uses, and it's a manually wired dependency injection system. So it's not using any sort of dependency injection framework because it's not important or needed. And that's not the problem that Pico is trying to solve. So we have to wire it into our dependency injection system, which is the Bootstrap. And the Bootstrap is a monster of a system. An absolute monster. Because it's all manually wired. It's all manually wired. I always hate for this file in particular, the container file, which is basically storing the reference to every object in the system. This one is a nightmare to do field alignment on because it's so big that the when you do the field alignment diff and all of that, the output's so large that it's hard to find the right place to put something. But we're going to wire it into here, the worker system. I need to review this code at some point because I have a concern that the startup times for Pico are too slow. Now, that doesn't mean it's slow to start up. It starts up in like a second or something. But I do wonder if it's too slow. Because it's obviously one of those things that, if it starts up in a second on my fast computer, when you're running in a container with limited resources on an old CPU architecture, that 1 second may be multiple seconds, and that can start you can start feeling that. Especially if you want to scale something quickly to react to load. You don't want it to take seconds to start up. So I've been meaning to review with the profiler the startup times, see if there's anything there to trim the fat off the bone. Okay. So let me just how are we going to wire this in? The other big problem that Pico has is obviously it's a large system. And I realize the size of the system ultimately means it's not desirable by the greater Go community. So I do wonder if like a segmented distributed approach to the system is this needs comments, is preferable. And that in turn could help startup times. But one of the other things I'm trying to do with Pico is to reduce speed of development. And there conflicting concerns to a certain extent. And trying to marry them is difficult. So let's just see. Let's just see if we can wire this in. So I'm going to just shove this at the bottom. And the reason why I'm going to shove it at the bottom is because, like I said, it's going to be fun putting everything in the right place with the field alignment, and I'll do that off stream afterwards. So the first thing is just do it. So let's say worker service, worker domain dot service. Am I missing something? I think the thing that annoys me the most about Z, and I'm sure it's an option, is when I change file, it jumps that place in the file tree. I've never understood why this behavior is default in VS Code, and I think it was Atom as well. Oh, you don't see the file tree, but when you change file, it jumps the file tree, and in my head, they're conceptually different places. See, I closed the thing to go to a different file, and now it jumped me up in the file tree. Yeah, whatever. I might have a look at disabling that after this stream. So what was it I wanted to see? Service is not exposed. Well, expose it. Please. I asked nicely and you're not performing the action. Why? Right click. Rename symbol. S. Why are you now? Why don't you just perform the action? Rename symbol. Yes, you're an IDE. Am I doing something wrong? Service. I don't see any message on the screen anywhere or like... Oh. I have a port called service. Oh, that's fine. That's actually probably what I want, actually. Hold on. Why would I want to point to the struct anyway? I want to point to the port. Wait, no, why is this... Okay, now I'm even more confused. I thought this couldn't find service before. It can't. I'm sorry, what? Worker domain. Oh, it's because you need to import it. Okay. Well, hold on, why could you find the other things? Okay, whatever, I can find it. So I think if you... Whatever. I think Zed struggles to find interfaces if you don't import it into the file. So worker... So I think we record the errors when something fails to start up. Yeah. So worker error is error. There's a config for the worker as a whole. Is that in worker domain? Config. Workers. I'm just realizing this is bad naming, isn't it? Shouldn't this all be singular, not plural? Okay, we'll leave it plural for now. I believe we have a once, yeah, worker once, to make sure we don't accidentally make multiple. We also have a config for the service option. So we'll say worker options, worker domain. And the notify system will be overridable in the future. Okay. I think that's everything. Yeah, this is the other thing that annoys me is that when you change file, I don't know how to like make it like stick to it. Okay, you double click on it. Okay. This is all stuff from like the Atom School of IDE. Whatever. Actually, now I think about it, I think this Sublime used to do this back in the day too. I wanted to check something, but sorry, I wanted to go to ports, and I just wanted to validate notify subscribe because we currently use the in process notifier. I just wanted to validate to myself that that does satisfy the interface, which it does. What I'm lacking, I think. No, I do check. Okay, I do check. Is I think I've been a bit lackluster on this task so far at enforcing interface checks. So the way, okay, you have to change file to move in the file directory. I don't like this. I don't like this. I'm gonna Google it. Dead. Zed, change. I don't know what to say. Zed move direct file directory file change. I want to stop doing it. These things, I don't understand why they're connected. File. I didn't know what to put into Google, if I'm going to be honest with you. It's one of those things I might have to ask AI because I just don't know how to Google it. File. Ah, is this? No. Oh, duplicate. Okay. Is that what I want? Nope. Or if it is, I need to restart for it to work. I probably have to restart Zed. I mean, that's one of the issues I had with Zed in the past, that whenever you change the config, you have to restart it. Okay, well, let's just continue. I can't remember what the other issue I was having was. So we're wiring this into the bootstrap. Okay. Well, the way that it normally works is that you'll create a new file for the container itself. Okay, I need to concentrate more. I'm probably a bit too tired, and so I'm getting a bit distracted today. Let's see. So we're going to need a container worker.go file. And what this is going to do is have all of the code for wiring in that particular container. Let's move that. It's still got the whole jumping around, but I'll just ignore it for now. So let me just try and remind myself what is actually happening over here. So we set the service. Okay. So it's just all the stuff we're going to need for the actual construction of the... For the most part, it's everything we did already when we were building the tests. So we're probably just going to want to start with, let's just keep it simple, just to get us going. Once we're going, we'll be fine. Build worker service. And we would want to pass in our options. Service option. And this would return the worker service and an error. Service error. Isn't there a method? Maybe looking at the LLM one is an actually good way to indicate myself how I'm going to build this. This is a lot better one to copy. Yeah. Or actually, probably the best one to copy is... Doesn't the action service get a file? It's not really a service, is it? That's the point. Because I don't think the action system has runtime. Technically. Okay, well, okay, let's see what damage we can do. Let's see what damage we can do. Let's not do it like this. We're going to need the... This is why I just don't want it jumping around, because I'm going to be all over this file base. It just... See, that's the other issue. It closed the file. Now I've lost what I was doing, because it closed the file randomly. Z, stop file random closing. Come on. Dead. Stop closing files without edits. Preview tabs. Yeah, I don't want that. That's something else I don't want. So how did I... What was it? It was like Control Shift comma? No, it wasn't that. Control Alt comma? No. Yes, that was it. Preview tabs. It's not that. Enabled. False. Once again, this probably isn't going to do anything until I restart. Container worker. Now I can't remember what's copying. It's still got them. Okay. Okay, so with... hold on a second. You... Hold on a second. The reason why this is routed through options is because the concept is that people will be able to swap out the storage system with another storage system. However, that logic doesn't apply for the worker system because they won't be swapping out the worker system with another worker system. They would only be swapping out components of the worker system with other components. So, for example, the notify system may be swapped out, but the actual worker systems itself could never be swapped out. That doesn't make sense. And it's not because I'm trying to gatekeep it, but because nothing else would work with the implementation. So we wouldn't do it like that for this. Okay, let's start with the dumb stuff. Let's start with the dumb stuff which doesn't require thinking just to get the ball rolling, because we're just sitting here wasting time. So get worker service, worker domain dot service, and it needs the import to be helpful. It already has the import. Worker wants need that import to be helpful. Honestly, we might not even need any of this. Create default. So, okay. So this is the actual initialization code. And honestly, we could just do... Sorry, what's going on in my brain? Worker service. Worker error. And then we could have a build worker service function or method that we're going to have to create. This is going to have to be completely overridable in the future. So there will be a lot of extensibility that we're going to have to do. And then we could pass in our worker options that we're recording there. And then if this has been done, we'll just return worker service and see worker error. And we wouldn't need the logger yet. So we're going to have to implement this build worker service method. And we'll say provide a string opts. It's basically what I was tried to start with initially. Service option. And then this will return the worker service and the error. Am I dumb? Alright, this should probably have been a slice from the beginning. Okay. And then what this will look like is blah, blah, blah. So in the future, we're going to have... I'm pausing for a second. So this, right now we say provide a string like this. In the future... Because what I'm just thinking of is dependencies and not pulling in more dependencies than we want into the root go mod. So we can call Postgres over database SQL, and if we have to use PGX, then they have to enable that consciously to not pull in an extra dependency. So right now we're handling this as a string, but this may need to be handled through the options with dependency injection so that someone can pass in the actual database service that they want. Okay. If. Always a good place to start. Let's just say for now, let's just say this has to be SQLite. And then I'm gonna just have a think about oh. Because this is all going to have to be all properly wired in the future. We're probably not going to want to handle this as strings. Let's just do it like this. So we're just going to default to just SQLite. In the future, okay. The important thing is just to get it working. What are the guard clauses? I can get the app context from the container, I believe. And then we can get a logger. What's the way that I handle clock in other places? Because we have to start with creating the store. Which, for simplicity, let's actually make that into another method. Because we will need the clock. And this would want the logic that we put into our tests down here. For the harness, I believe. Because when we create the store, I think we're going to be hard coding a lot of this to SQLite for now. And then I'll have to come back because we're not going to be actually implementing SQL. Sorry, we're not going to be implementing Postgres until we've got everything working as we want. So I think there's going to be a lot of how do I do it? Because this should be the Pico path. So this will be the Pico internal path. Let's just say what's how do I create the registry service? That's a good one to copy. The thing is, these other services, they have the ability to be started with a WAL, an Otter WAL, which we don't support yet for our worker system. And I suspect we will, but I did the SQLite implementation first. Because this is the ideal implementation. What's happening here? Because here, run migrations if configured. Query a migration service. Ah. So hold on. Database name registry. Okay, we're getting somewhere. We're getting somewhere. Yeah. Okay, so because I think what I want ideally in the future is the same Otter WAL, the same Otter WAL system, and then the DAL system needs to be properly implemented to swap between the right database backend. Whereas right now it's all very hard coded to SQLite because that's all we got working, right? So then we can get the database connection. Then we can get the driver. Now we're slowly getting unstuck as I unpick as I unpick it, we're slowly getting unstuck. So we don't support Postgres yet. Obviously, we want to. But this can do nothing. Because there is no system for it. Do we have an error for Postgres unsupported already, or do I have to make that? Let's just do errors. Let's just be lazy. Error new Postgres unsupported. Nil Postgres unsupported. And then we would be able to I'm gonna have to copy. Because this is the thing, I don't actually have this adapter system like I should do. That's going to have to be the next thing I really work on. I really have to make this cohesive in the same implementation as the registry with the full setup. But I should be able to just say query SQLite and then point to it directly. But it wouldn't be new dull because that's for the proxy. I got confident that that's all I had to do. We need a clock. And that's not going to return a dull. This would return, and this would just be the store. So this is all kind of very hacky. This really isn't how it should be. This has to be implemented a lot closer to what I'm doing with the registry. Okay. I also have to register this. Isn't there like an ads database? Where do I register it initially? With database. It was probably like a year ago I wired this up. For the databases. I'm confused. How do I currently register the databases? I prefer the search system in Goland, to be honest with you. This is exposed. Like, I just wish... Oh, I guess I can do this. See, I thought even if you don't do that, it's still going to give you a database built in. I thought it detects... I guess it doesn't. Because that's only if you ask for an actual database. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. For some reason in my head, I was assuming that when you did Otter, it would still, like, with database or something, if you know what I mean. But no, it doesn't, does it? That's only if you're using a database engine. That's right. That's correct. And so by default, there is no registration with database by default. But we're going to have to add one here temporarily. I'm gonna... What? I'm gonna... Yeah, something like that. Or to-do end, I don't know. So we're gonna have to add this manually for now. So once a database registration. Yeah. Yeah. Driver name. I don't have... Okay, we're just gonna do something horrible for now. So... And where was... Here? This is all gonna go. This is all gonna go. Work. Let's just do that for now. And then... Journal mode while... Busy timeout, sure. Foreign kit, sure. That's perfect. That's perfect. And we need to import you. And we need to import you. We need to pass in where the migrations are. I think we expose that. And then we can say the directory is migrations. Is that all we need? What I'm currently fighting with is how important it is to actually start implementing the Otter implementation and if it would even work. And I'm wondering if that should be a priority. I'm wondering if that should be a priority. And that I'm digging myself into a corner by what I'm doing here. Well, it's a bit dramatic to say it like that. But I'm doing what I'm doing prematurely. Because I can see that being the truth. Yeah, I do wonder if I'm doing what I'm doing prematurely. Because we can say build worker store. Sorry, what? I just created my thing. Oh, yeah. Let's just give it a nil clock for now because that is valid and then it'll default to a real clock, but I do have to be handling that. If error equals nil, return nil format error f, blah blah blah. Creating worker store. Error. We'd want to create our notifier, and for now we'll just use the in process notifier. New in process notifier. And then we can set that on our container. That will also need to be able to be overridden through a functional option. We would need to create our config worker. Let's just do this for now. But this would need to handle the actual resolve worker config. But then we'd be able to say service would be worker domain dot service. We would pass in the store. Sorry, not service like that. It would be a new service. Pass in the store, and then we have service options. Which we could just say ops. And then we could say L dot. What level do I log when I create? Do I even log? We don't log. Okay, fine. Let's not worry about that then. How do I pass in the worker config? Okay, whatever. See, I'm having a pause because I'm wondering if it's somewhat important. I'm not using any of these things. I'm wondering if it's somewhat important to actually implement the Otter system. If that's a priority or not. I think I'm going to leave it for now. That may be what we dive into next time. I think what I really wanted to do is I wanted to wire this into the bootstrap. But I didn't realize when I wanted to start this task just how much things this would start to make me think of architecturally. This is the type of task which makes you realize just all of the things you're going to have to start considering. When you want to make this actually go to production. And there's a lot of stuff that I'm not even referencing here. For example, like health checks and provider. Like we saw that for here, there was the provider. The provider hooks and the health check hooks. We also need to register it for shutdown. Which is confusing me because how does the registry get registered for register shutdown handlers? Yeah. Because we're also going to want something like this. Register worker shutdown handlers. It would just be like this. Am I not even storing the store in the container? Can I close the worker service? No. Does the worker store even have a close function? Because it should. No, it does not. Oh, but we have shutdown. It's, I'm gonna make a note of that. I'm just realized I'm being inconsistent with my naming because I usually name things closed, not shut down. Worker service. Shut down. C dot app context. How does how do you get cool? Who calls? Create default registry service. So that gets called up. That'd be something like the here. So this is getting a bit messy. Yeah, I'm starting to in my head have a clear list of all of the things I'm going to have to work on. I'm tempted to step out of this and come back to the bootstrap. Mostly because I think it's one of those tasks where I want to have a moment to really think through the correct structure. And I do wonder if I should just finish wiring the dial properly. Just so then we have a nice, consistent layer with the registry. And then by aligning them, it gives me the confidence that the service has been implemented in the right way. Okay. I think I might take a pause here. And think through it a bit more. Just having a think. I'm just going to take a moment just to remind myself how the while is integrated with the Otter setup. Because I like the idea of making cohesive. I have a drink while I think. I like the idea of making cohesive. Because ultimately, the the way that the registry is wired in should ultimately match the way that I've wired in the worker system. I don't like them being so fundamentally different. I might give this a go now. Let me just I might give this a go now. The reason why I have the Otter dial system is so the idea is that conceptually you could um have things working without a database. That's the fundamental reason. It's mostly just a lightweight implementation just to get you going. thing is I'm trying to figure out if it contradicts what the worker system even tries to do. It wouldn't be hard to start it here, right? Like, I already know the starting. I believe. Why would it do that? I just want to go to. Just want to. Yeah, this is where I want to go. I just want to go there. Can I? Internal. Yeah. And what do I have now, right now, for the worker system? So, because ultimately, what I'm going to. I think this is the right thing to do. I think wiring it up was premature because I hadn't finished implementing the doll in the way that I want to do it. And really, that is what I should be doing. I got a bit ahead of myself. Because we have the query SQLite. The fundamental things we're missing is the mock. That's important. We're missing Otter. It's not really important, but I would like it to be there. I'm trying to remember why I have two adapters. Because in my memory, it was one shared adapter. Same for the orchestrator. Why in my memory was it one adapter when it's two? I'm trying to remember why it's different because the key thing is that they don't import PGX or anything here. That's like a fundamental thing. There should only be one adapter. Why is there two adapters? Two adapters. What was I thinking at the time? Was this a hack I never cleaned up? It could very well be. I'm thinking this was like a hack I never cleaned up for some very arbitrary minor reason. And I probably just duplicated the files. Because they sure as hell look duplicated. They sure as hell look duplicated. So I think this is a hack. I know this is one of those sessions where you don't make a lot of progress with code, but you leave the session with 50,000 more things in your brain than before you started it. I'm going to have to make a note of this. I remember there being a lot of cleaning up before I made this open source. And I remember there being a hack because I was having a problem with trying to keep PGX out of the root go mod. And so I probably duplicated it for that reason at the time. And that's now being resolved because the emitter is now separated intentionally to avoid this issue. And originally, I was using SQLC for generating the queries, which was abandoned. And possibly this is also a relic from that time, additionally. I think this session is turning into just scoping out all of the work that actually needs to be done. And hopefully next session is going to make it a lot easier just to dive into all of the other tasks that have to be done. And then next session, yeah. and just start churning out code again. So let me I was getting distracted. The goal was to actually just look at how the registry does otter and just remind myself. So it's in my otter implementation, my cache implementation. Does have indexing. So it's like a mini database with basically no dependencies. That was the original idea behind it. I'm probably getting a bit too tired to proceed. Um, so we made probably some of the least amount of progress out of any stream so far. However, I am in a situation where there's like 1,000 more things to think of, which is a good position to be in. It's a good position to be in. Okay, I think I know what needs to be done. I need to actually make. I need to actually flesh out this doll. I need to fundamentally flesh out this doll, and I need to make the way that the worker system is wired in to match how the registry system is wired in. And then we're going to be in a good position to continue to flesh out all of the features the worker system needs, and then work on the code generation. This is like weeks down the road, but work on the code generation so that the worker system is actually usable. And then I'm going to be able to use it in the projects I need to use it in. Okay. I think I'm going to stop here. It's a bit of a short stream, but I think I'm going to want to have a break, and we can then I can think in depth what needs to be done. We, on a very technical note, you could argue we have basically wired it in. But it's just not quite what I wanted from it. Because I don't want to actually have a default database connection. That is the goal. So that you, as a user of the system, when you want to define your database connection, you do so explicitly. And so you're in control, essentially. That is meant to be the mindset. Because this does slightly fight what we try to do. Because ultimately what we would want, just to get my brain flowing, even though we'll stop, registry del otter. I can see that there's some folders that just are missing the Go leak test, which surprises me because I thought I was pretty exhaustive in adding it. I think I need an actual linter to validate that all of the folders that should have. I'm going to make a note of that. I'm going to make a note of that. Linter to validate folders that need Go leak Go file actually have it. Yeah, I want that. So I want to see if someone's made it. So if it works like the one I was reading before, we would have something like this. So there would be a sync mutex for the store. We would want to have, we don't have to use our DTO object. We could create a job entry struct with ID string, kind string, kind string, Q string, payload byte, max attempts. I need to actually check my thing. Hold on. Oh, now it's not doing it. It's not jumping me around. Okay, good. Um, really what I need to be looking at is the migration. Version sequence. Max attempts. So I'm trying to figure out which things we actually do need and which ones are um let's say we can point directly to the versions, workdto.versions. Timeout seconds. Okay. We could validate that this is a valid type of store. I need to think if I want to use the word store or dal. I think I might want to rename things. Why are you unhappy? Am I? Oh yeah, of course. And then it'll be like jobs map string job entry. We would want to possibly make sure that the order is deterministic. And we could keep a sequence ID, which would mean so this is unique to the otter thing, just so we can replay, I think, more accurately the order of events. Because the registry didn't care about that. And then it'll be some like func new, blah 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 blah. Return doll. And then we'll just say jobs make sure, hold on. And then I'm just checking. Okay. And then, if we want to keep it sequential, so we can have deterministic scans, we would want a nice, easy way to get the current worker version. Oh. So this is going to be quite simple. And then we can just also have an easy helper function for appending a version. Probably you may just want to interface with the DAL to do this operation. Say D DAL E job entry version worker DTO job version. D sequence ID. So I'll keep track of all versions that have been appended. So version dot job ID, version dot sequence, version dot recorded at. Let's just do it like this. E.id, version dot sequence, I might need to pass in my clock. And then it's all about just starting to implement all of these methods, but for the Otter-based system. I probably am getting too tired to do this though. So this is blah 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 blah. This is fine. Sure. A lot of this is just going to be the same. A lot of this is just copy and paste. Okay. I think I'm going to do this off camera tomorrow. it's just going to be a lot of copy and paste and a lot of duplicating code. But then we'll actually have a proper DAL to proceed with, which is, I think, important. Obviously, would lock defer d.mu.unlock. Okay. I'm going to call it here. A shorter stream, but I think we're on the basis of knowing what needs to be done in the code base now. So I think from next time it should be a lot easier to actually bring it all together, so to speak. I'm tempted to just do this one method right now, just so it's done. And then I have a basis of doing the rest when it comes to it. So let's just throw that together, and then I'm giving myself a basis to copy. So we could say something like var candidate. Oh, job entry. So possible candidate. Why are you unhappy? Am I I did the mistake I did made the other day. Instead of for, I did if. Possible candidates. D jobs. ID. Current. So we're getting the current job. If possible candidate dot status equals this will be the enum, won't it? Worker domain status pending. And we have to check that it hasn't been deleted. So after, I need now. I need now. What's now? Now equals time dot now. Candidates equals append candidates d dot jobs ID. Scanning all possible candidates. With the odd system, if I recall correctly, like I said, we do have indexes. I might have to check how that works afterwards, so we actually use the index for searching over this. And then we could say sort dot slice stable candidates func I j int bool we're going to want to sort them by how tasty of a candidate they are. I don't know, CICJ candidates I dot current let's just tidy this up. Current I think of the best way to name this. Mm-hmm. If dot priority doesn't equals candidate version B dot priority, return candidate version A dot priority greater than candidate version B dot priority. So we'll filter first by priority, then we'll filter by time. So if they have the same priority, would prefer the time to filter by the time. So that would be candidate version A dot scheduled at dot equals candidate version B dot scheduled at. So if they don't match, then we'll filter by that. So candidate version A scheduled at. We'd want to validate that it was before. Candidate version B dot scheduled at. Candidate version. So we'll check the priority and the scheduled at, and then if then they still match, let's check the sequence so we're as deterministic as we can be. And for that, I'm going to need to actually check the array again, the slice candidates. Dot insert sequence is smaller than candidates B insert sequence. And then we should validate Well, what we should do is we should make sure that the amount of candidates is truncated to the hard cap. As such. So it's always easier doing this with an SQL statement, but yeah, no. So this will be the structure we return, the normal job record. And then we just create that. So dot current. I don't like how like what there was no reason to put dot event at the end. There was no reason why it did that. Um so I just need to remind myself what is it we do? Claim due. This is what we're doing now. We need to append a new version. So that would look like d dot append version. Candidate. Worker DTO dot job version. Did I lose the file I was working on? No, okay. So it would let's use that as a reference. So job ID. Um I need to expand what I have up here. And then after that, we would want to add it to the outputs. So it'll be like out, append, out, worker DTO, job record, and then would put out the output as this expects. And then that's a databaseless in memory version of the system. This would just be like this. This would just be like... Would this even need conversion? This is now. This will be something like ID is candidate.id. Nice. Status is worker domain.status running. Kind would be candidate.kind. Need to remind myself what didn't I split? Right. Perfect. Q candidate.q. Payload candidate.payload. Max attempts candidate.max attempts. Gonna give it to me. Timeout seconds. Claimed by worker ID, candidate version claimed by worker ID. How many more things do I actually have to do? Schedule that. Okay. This is the shit work. What I'm doing right now is the shit work. Created that. Okay. We need priority for sure. That one's fundamental. We don't record the attempt. I think that's everything. So that is a variation for the Can you just implement all the methods for me? So yeah, I'm gonna have to implement all of these. basically. And then the benefit is by doing this, I'm going to be able to take this out of the bootstrap, make it so that it has an inherent way of storing and retrieving this data as part of the system, and then the ability to connect to databases is managed by the developer using the framework. And then it aligns more closely with how the rest of the framework works, where we have the gradual growth of complexity depending on what the developer wants to use the system with. And I'm going to have to make this work with the while, but that's fine. That can happen. I think I'm just going to have to lock in and then start coding up all of these files, all of these methods. I'll probably get it done in a day. And then we're going to be in a nice new footing for the next session. Okay. Well, thank you to everyone who tuned in. I hope you all have a lovely evening. And yeah, thank you very much. Yeah. All right.